welcome. I am Katrina Brooks. I am the founder and co-owner of Black Girl Books. Thank you. Our mission is to promote diversity, inclusion, and representation through literature. That is who we are. That is what we do. I don't want to spend too much time talking about us because I do want to get to these wonderful ladies here. But a couple of things to mention. You all registered, and you pay $10. There's a $10 credit for anything in the store that is only good this evening. So if you have not already used that, please make sure you use that when we go back over. Okay. Also, on all of your chairs, there's a torch brochure, but there's also a little note card, and we have some extra pens up here if anyone needs them. We're doing a little exercise that is impromptu a little bit. So, All the Blues in the Sky on ReneéWatson.net, on Renée Watson's website, there is a workbook that goes along with this book. It is free to download. But one of the very first writing activities on there says, all the blues in the sky begins and ends with Sage listing the things she would tell a child when she would listing the things she would tell a child once she is older. Write an advice poem that lists the things you wish someone would have told you. Or I would say something you would tell your middle grade self. So wanted you to be thinking about that as they are speaking. And you have those. Again, if you need pens, we have them. We can pass them out. But it is something to reflect on. And this book is all about reflection. So wanted to mention that. Now, we will move along here. Everyone that is in attendance will receive a free copy of the book, courtesy of Torch Literary Arts. Torch Literary Arts is a 501c3 nonprofit whose mission is to promote the work of Black women by publishing contemporary creative writing by emerging and experienced writers alike, to archive contributors' literary work for prosperity and educational purposes, and to provide resources and opportunities for the advancement of Black women through literary arts. Ms. Amanda Johnson is the founder and executive director of Torch Literary Arts. Amanda is a writer, visual artist, and the 2024 Texas Poet Laureate. Of experience in nonprofit management and earned an MFA in creative writing from the University of Southern Maine. Her work has also appeared in numerous online and print publications. Without further ado, I would love to introduce Ms. Amanda Johnson.
Oh my gosh, thank you so much, Katrina. Thank you so much, Eric. Black Pearl Books. Round of applause for Black Pearl Books. We are always excited and honored to be here with our friends at Austin's Black-owned bookstore. Yes. It is so important and necessary to feed into organizations that feed into us, right, and keep us well-fed with these literary books, with these incredible offerings that serve sometimes as a salve, as a balm, as a healing when we are going through our hard times, to be able to find others and share those stories on and off the page. Thank you, Black Girl Books. And thank you to our incredible guest, Renée Watson. I'm going to read your bio here so we say it correctly, but please know this is still condensed. You've done so much in your career, and we are so honored and thrilled to have you with us this evening. Renée Watson is a #1 New York Times best-selling author. Her novel, Piecing Me Together, received the Newbery Honor and Coretta Scott King Award. Her books include the Ryan Hart series, Some Places More Than Others, This Side of Home, What Mama Left Me, Betty Before X, co-written with Alicia Shabazz, Watch Us Rise, co-written with Ellen Hagen, and Love is a Revolution, a poetry collection, Black Girl, You Are Atlas, as well as acclaimed picture books, Summer is Here, Maya's Song, the 1619 Project, Born on the Water, written with Nicole Hannah-Jones, A Place Where Hurricanes Happen, and Harlem's Little Black Bird, which was nominated for an NAACP Image Award. Renee splits her time between Portland, Oregon, and New York City, but is right here with us in Austin, Texas. So I thought, we would start with you maybe reading a section of the book, and then we'll talk. It's going to be really hard. First, raise your hand if you've already read the book. All right, so we got some folks in here, but I also don't want to do spoilers.
Yeah.
So,
No spoilers. I will make spoilers. It's so good to be here. I've been on tour for 3 weeks, and you all are kind of my grand finale. So it's really nice. I feel so loved and cared for by your community. So thank you so much. I'm going to be right from the beginning, so I don't have to set it up too much. I will say, when I talk about the book, I am saying, Sage is full of big dreams. She wants to be a pilot, and she is having her first crush. She's 13. And while she's dreaming big and meeting new friends and having her crush, she is also dealing with a lot of grief. Her best friend is killed in a car accident. She's hit by a drunk driver. And we meet Sage in the midst of that grief. It has already happened a few weeks after it. And so she is figuring out, how do I hold on to my full self, my big dreams, my joys and my sorrow, and not deny the sadness and be in denial about that, but also not give up. And so in this moment, she's just thinking about naming grief and what she wishes adults would have told her about it. I didn't know best friends could die. When adults tell you about dying, they talk about your pet or an elderly neighbor, or your grandpa or your grandma. And when they tell you about dying, they tell you it's okay to cry. They tell you it's okay to be angry. They tell you it's even okay to laugh and still have fun. But what they don't tell you is that the sadness and anger and laughter don't wait their turn. No. Sometimes sadness and anger and laughter come all at once, on the same day. Sometimes in a burst, sometimes a slow trickle. They don't tell you that sometimes you don't even know what to call what you're feeling because you've never felt it before. Maybe they don't tell you this because they don't know. Or maybe there are so many things to teach a child, they forget to mention this. If I live long enough to become an adult, and if I have children when I'm an adult, I will tell them. And I will tell them that sometimes you go to sleep crying, you wake up crying, and that life after losing someone you love feels like one big ocean of sorrow. And you might feel like you are drowning, but always there's something to hold on to keep you afloat. Let's have a look at this.
So one of the things that I absolutely adore and appreciate about your writing is how you write eye to eye with young readers, right? And when you do that, Mrs. Renee, you allow a way for us to let our inner children come through, and reading these books. They're not just for young readers. Anyone can pick up this book. It's great for adults as well. But how do you approach that? When you're thinking of your reader and knowing that this will be available for young readers, how do you imagine that reader and to find a way into them that says it plain and holds it through?
Thank you for saying that. I really do think that books are for everyone. And it's so funny to me when adults have to make the disclaimer that, I'm getting this for my niece or this is my student or something. It's okay if you read YA and feel great as an adult. Because I do think there's some healing that needs to take place even for us. And so when I am writing, I am thinking of the whole family. I'm thinking of the teachers. I'm thinking of the caregivers who will be reading alongside their child. And what do I want that adult to be kind of listening in on so that you can have conversations with the young people in your life. So I am thinking of us as adults when I write. But I'm also thinking of bearing witness to young people. I think, our young people are humans. They're just younger. They just haven't lived as long. But their feelings are real. They feel anger and sadness, frustration. They have questions. And so I want through my books to provide space for them to feel seen and validated, and to have characters who may have those same questions and big feelings, and hopefully they can see this character go through something and relate to her. I often say, so I grew up in a Black Baptist church, and the kind of church where you talk back and you have to, he said, I said, say amen, and it is call and response, and you have to see a person and say, yes, amen, I see you, I hear you, I feel you. And I want my books to be an amen to young people. I want to say to them, you're not making it up. This world is hard. Yes, I see you. I know. I got you. We're going to be all right. And that's what I hope my book is doing with a young person, just kind of hugging them and holding space with them.
Thank you for that. And I know, like you said, this book for families, right? And so when a child is dealing with a loss of a friend or family member, whatever, refers to this as loss, we know it's not them alone.
Right.
Everyone that's around and touching them to figure out how to care for them. I know that you're experiencing some loss right now. We're all still grieving the loss of our beloved Nikki Giovanni, who I know was very close to his family. She's quoted saying that she had a daughter, Renée Watson. Is this book holding you right now?
I think so. I wrote, it's so interesting publishing. I wrote this a long time ago in comparison to it coming out now, and losing Nikki so close to the book coming out felt just so wrong. I was just like, are you for real? I have to go out and talk about the thing I just wrote about, and live this thing for real. And so what has happened is the community, all of you, my readers, have really hugged me and embraced me and given me space to talk about her and honor her legacy. I feel not just held by my book, I feel held by the readers and folks who know what's happened. Every tourist I've gone on, there has been someone, and sometimes a child, who would just come up and said, I know you're breathing, Miss Giovanni, we read her poem. They know her work. And so it's just been beautiful to talk about her and share her with everybody, and to be this kind of collective grief. I've been saying a lot, when the pandemic happened, we were all quarantined in our own spaces, and we came back together in our schools and churches, community spaces. I don't know that adults did a good job of asking young people, how are you doing? What happened when you were away from each other? Do you have questions? What are you grieving? Because grief, as we all know as adults, it's not just about a person. We're grieving our neighborhoods that have been gentrified. We're grieving having to say goodbye to a friend who just moved, to not getting to graduate and walk across the stage, and have those ceremonies. There's a lot of things that I think young people have been having to let go of, get over, and I don't know that we gave them space for that. So I feel like this tour, I'm grieving a person, but I do think there are a lot of people who are grieving other kinds of losses. And so we've just been in this big collective, like, let's talk about it. It's okay to be sad. I see you. Thank you for seeing me. So yes, I feel very comforted by Nikki's legacy, but also by the people who are still living, who are carrying her legacy forward. Yeah.
Thank you. In that section, one last question for that section before we move on to another. You so brilliantly wrote, grief looks different ways.
Yes.
And, sometimes it comes out as laughter, and joy, and remembering, those good times and things like that. How should we be, or would you recommend that we lean into joy with children during grief?
Celebration is a big part of grief. I think it's so important to ask a young person, if you're talking about a person, what did you love about them? What do you miss about them? What were their favorite foods? Let's cook the meal that they loved together. Let's write an old poem to celebrate them. It doesn't have to be that when we sit and just cry together, which is important. I do think it's okay to, all kinds of tears are always welcome. So tears of joy or sadness. But I think in leaning into the joy, it's asking a young person, what parts of that person are in you? Like, where do you see them showing up in your life and your personality? I was saying earlier today when I think about my mother, who passed away 3 years ago now, which sometimes feels like yesterday. I'm thinking of all the ways I'm like her, and sometimes I'll say something like, that was my mama. And so I think we can just lean into that part of the joy. If it's grief about a place, what did you love about that place? Put on record what that place was, so that as our neighborhoods are changing and things are evolving, and these renewal plans that are coming and pushing us out, let's put on record and celebrate our spaces. So for me as an artist, I think I've leaned into poetry and making art to kind of honor and hold space for the things I'm grieving, and a lot of times that shows up as celebration.
So I'm sorry, one more question before we do. So you brought up poetry. You are, again, a force. Every genre you just own. Why did you choose to write this novel in verse?
So I do. Poetry is my first love. I grew up reading it. Those are the first mirrors I saw my reflection in as a young Black girl growing up in the Pacific Northwest. Not all of my teachers, especially when I was little, were giving me books where there were Black characters who weren't struggling. But I had poetry. I had Nikki and Maya and Gwendolyn and Langston, who were talking like my people. And I was like, what, this sounds like my neighborhood. This feels familiar. And so my first love is poetry for that reason. But also, I was thinking about trying to take care of the reader. I think poetry can be a container for big, heavy emotions. And as our young people are reading this book, I didn't want to overwhelm them with too many words on the page, because there are so many big emotions happening in the book that I thought it would be best to give them less words, because the feelings were going to be so big. And I wanted them to have space to pause. If you open the book, you'll see there's a lot of white space on the page. Some pages have one sentence, one line. And that's just to give the reader a chance to just, as they're reading, where long paragraphs and prose don't necessarily allow for that. You want me to read?
Yeah, that's
So
what I'm
I was talking about, in the opening that I read, Sage mentions that there's always something to hold on to keep you afloat. And I wanted to make sure that young people realize that they have some anchors, and that you can be going through something hard, but that's when you lean on your people, right? We're not islands. We have community, and then you have your blood family, your chosen family, peers, and then hopefully some elders. So she's making new friends in a grief group, and she's also leaning on Aunt Annie, who's one of my favorite characters. She's just wise, and she sees Sage and talks to her, like you said, kind of eye to eye. So in this moment, she's talking to Sage and helping her work through this idea of there will be many sorrows and many joys. Life is never going to be all of one or the other. One of my favorite quotes is Maya Angelou, who says, "My greatest hope is that I laugh as much as I cry." My greatest hope is that I laugh as much as I cry. So she's guaranteeing there will be tears. She's not hoping for no sorrow, which is wild to me that wouldn't be the hope. But she's like, oh, I already know there's gonna be sadness and hardship. I'm just hoping I get to laugh too. And so Sage at 13 is learning, like, oh, okay, life is gonna be full of both. Aunt Annie and I go to Chelsea Market. We try on jewelry we know we are not going to buy, test samples, and people watch. There's an even mix of tourists and locals, and we can tell that by who's stopping and oohing and eyeing to take pictures. I miss her all the time, I say. You always will, Aunt Annie tells me. Really? I ask. Not as an actual question, but because I am surprised Aunt Annie is being so honest. Most times, adults tell me, it'll get better, or time will heal. Aunt Annie says, you will miss her every day of your life. Sometimes the memories will bring tears, sometimes a smile. The memories won't always overwhelm you. They will bring comfort too. Is that how it is with you? Do you miss Grandma every day? Every single day. And she's been gone 40 years, Aunt Annie says. I think about this. Aunt Annie has been living 40 years without her sister. And Dad has been living without his mom most of his life. And I never knew this woman who is my grandmother. 40 years. Aunt Annie takes my hand. But isn't that a beautiful thing? To have experienced the kind of love that never truly leaves, that only grows and grows. In the past 40 years, Aunt Annie has cried and worried and prayed and dreamed and planned and failed and succeeded and laughed and celebrated and raised children and moved and worked and retired and vacationed and volunteered and read and sang and walked and talked and remembered and reflected and dipped her toes in the ocean and watched snow fall and got caught out in the rain and loved and grieved. And every day she got up. And every day she got up. Yeah.
And when I was reading, the book and learning her character, it made me think of the honest lights of love that we have in our life, right? Those people who love you, and I don't want to say, it's like a hard love, like telling you the truth isn't hard. It's loving you more than telling you the truth, I think, right? Who are those lights of honest love in your life?
Oh, I have so many. I'm so grateful. Seriously, I always say, nobody has friends like me. I'm sorry, y'all. I mean, they hold me down. They are amazing. My sisters, I'm so fortunate. I'm the youngest of 5. I am the baby of the family. And I'm so well taken care of by them and so loved by them. So my first community, my first literal sisterhood were my sisters. And one of them is here. Cheryl is here in the back. And so those are my first go-to kind of for comfort, guidance, wisdom, venting. And then I just have a small group of friends who I know that they see me. And I know that they care about me. I was saying to young people earlier today, I got to visit some schools in your community, and we're talking about how to choose friends and how to have people in your life who are going to tell you the truth, but you can listen to that truth because you know they love you, right? We're not gonna listen to folks who always got something to say, but they're not invested in you for real, right? So I think I just have people who have proven to me that they're here for me, whatever that means. They're here for the big moments that are, what I say, like the social media moments. They're here for those kinds of celebrations and all that. And also for the grief and the loss and the frustration and, and then the mundane when there's nothing happening. Life is also just a lot of us like, today happened. Nothing big, nothing horrible, we just living. And I love that I have people who just want to live life with me, whatever that life ends up being. So yeah, I have several anchors. And I'm so grateful.
That's beautiful. We're talking about chosen family.
Yeah.
Right. And so maybe for those who feel, that they don't have an extended family, we get to learn about the support group and other ways that Sage is able to build community and find people. Right. Where would you recommend, all people, start to look for those chosen families?
So, my first go-to are our ancestors and the folks who left the record of how to survive this world. I have mentors who they don't know that they've mentored me. They don't know me. Some of them are not even living anymore. Like we talked about Nikki, she was a real presence in my life. But then I never met Lisa Clifton. And I'm telling you, you can't tell me she wasn't talking to me in those homes and for me, you know what I mean? And not just their work, but I listened to their interviews. Toni Morrison, you can take a master class on how to deal with folks who are and how to put them in their place, and how to keep yourself in your place, right? I just love to sit and watch her interviews sometimes, or read her essays. And we talk a lot about her novels, but I love when Tony's just being Tony and in conversation with folks. So I learned a lot from people who did not know they were teaching me. And that way I've chosen my mentors, I've chosen the folks I look up to. So we all have access to those folks. And then, you know, your community, finding people. For me, I found kinship in people at the church. Sometimes some of my closest friends I worked with, like I used to be a teaching artist, which that field draws heart to people. So I ended up meeting visual artists, dancers, poets, musicians, and we're heart people, feelings people. And some of my closest friends came from the work that I would do teaching. So I would just say, look around. Sometimes we're waiting for something to come to us, and we don't realize what we have already if we just kind of open our eyes, because we want it in a certain package. I have a friendship with elders who we are an unlikely pair. I'm talking like there's 40 years difference, or you know, and I am learning from them. They are being healed in some ways from things I say, and so I just say find your people, and don't get too caught up on what they look like, where they're from, how old they are, all of that. Connect, soul to soul, heart to heart. I think that's what's most important.
Thank you for that. I think there's also a level of trusting yourself too,
Yes.
right? Like trusting yourself to say what you mean and trusting that it will be received.
Mm-hmm.
Right? There's a vulnerability when we're in our roughest spaces, right? When we're dealing with a lot, and it takes a lot to be able to say, I need to.
Yes, it's a risk.
Yeah.
To admit that you need someone. I think too, you know, in thinking about writing this, I was thinking about giving space for especially Black girls to be sad. We encourage them so often to be Black girl magic, and I think that's important. And I understand why we needed that, because for so long we were just down and out, and all the books were just the struggle books and the hard stories. And so then we went kind of to another extreme that was like, be bold, be brave, be amazing, be your brilliant self. And it's like, yes, be that, and also be gentle to yourself. And sometimes it's okay to be quiet. It's okay to sit and think and ponder. And so, yeah, I would encourage us too, as we're looking for other people, to find ourselves and be a friend to yourself. I think it's hard sometimes to just sit in that uncomfortable space with you and really get to know you. And so I hope that adults, but also young people, figure out who do you really want to be in this world, and what do you actually like, not just what your clique and your crew likes, but who are you really, and be okay with sitting with that. And that there can be comfort in that, being alone but not lonely, and really, you know, taking time to get to know who you are, so that when you meet the friends and you meet these opportunities and all this stuff is happening, you're kind of already settled and anchored, so you're not compromising as much as maybe you would if you didn't already know what your values were. Does that make sense?
Absolutely. And there's a huge power in knowing that you have full access to the full range of emotions.
Yes, yes.
Right? And that you know what that looks like when you're in it. Like you've written so richly. There will be tears, right? You will have sorrow, there will be grief, there will also be joy, there will be, and everything in between, there will also be desire, romance, right? So that, you know, at 13, I started having feelings and just a little bit. Cute is my cute.
That's when you know I'll be all right. I'm joking and serious about, it's so interesting when you're going through something hard. Sometimes you feel like, I'm never gonna laugh again. I'm never gonna, how in the world am I gonna be on this earth without fill in the blank? Or how am I gonna live in this city after all the things? How am I gonna live in this nation after so much is changing? And then you remember, oh, I still got my little two-step. I still know how to dance. I'm still laughing at something. I'm still waking up with a desire to do or to make or to be in conversation, and you realize We are made to survive. And so I try to lean into that when I'm sad. I'm thinking, yeah, I want to hold on to that. But I also want to make sure I'm making room for when laughter comes to let it. Because we need that to heal, I think. There's a moment in the book where I think it's her therapist, the school counselor, who's facilitating grief group after school. She says to the girls in the group, grief is like hunger. And but then the girls are thinking, well, what does that mean? And we eat. You ate today, probably, hopefully, taking care of our bodies. And it's not like tomorrow you're not going to need to eat, right? You're going to always need to eat. And sometimes we feast, and it is like, wow, appetizer, the main course, dessert, drinks after we just feasting. Sometimes it's a quick little snack. But every day we're going to need nourishment. And if grief is like hunger, I can give myself permission to let the sadness come whenever it needs to come. And sometimes it's going to be a big sadness, and I'm going to cry in the middle of a store because I reach for shortbread cookies and say, oh, my mom would, what am I doing? I can't get this for her. These were her favorite cookies. And then I cry, and I'm in the store, like, okay. And then, right? But then sometimes there'll be these little bite-sized moments where I can think of her and just like, oh my goodness, my mother would love this right now. Or I see her favorite colors somewhere. But every day, I'm gonna grieve her because she was my mama, right? And shouldn't I? Right? We don't want to forget the people we love. And so I have leaned into that too, and that's given me joy to just accept that I'm very human, and that it's a very human thing to grieve and to grieve always. And that it's not something to get over or something to like push through, that you come to the end, yeah, I've grieved that. I've moved on from that loss. Like, no. 10 years from now, I'm still gonna miss my mom, and I'm still gonna miss Nikki. And sometimes I can read her poetry and I'll be uplifted, and sometimes I can't hear her voice because it just hurts too much. And that all of that is normal and okay. I think once I accepted that, then I actually was crying less. There's something about just acknowledging this is normal, okay. And then I could actually function a little bit better instead of trying not to feel the pain. When I really felt it all, I realized I was able to handle it all.
Absolutely, and grief, when we're feeling that big loss in the moment, we also know it's not going to be the last time that we grieve. So we can't, just put on the brakes and say, oh, I've experienced this pain, and now I'm not going to experience anything. I don't want to feel anything else ever again because it might hurt or it might lead to a loss. So I love in the book that Sage also still gets to have her ambition and dreams and desires, right? This incredible community of supporters of honest loves in her life that carry through it. Keep, space in her heart to see herself through. So, I still want to be a pilot. Yes. I still want to do these things. I want to have love and experiences in my life. So, with that, maybe.
So, Sage wants to be a pilot, which is so not Renée Watson. People always say, who are you in the book? Are you pulling from your own experiences? I don't know why this child showed up to me loving math. I had to do all kind of research. Let's see. Oh, wait, so I can find the page. So in her wanting to be a pilot, she is understanding and learning that pilots see many shades of blue in the sky, and that they have to learn how to navigate all kinds of skies. Sometimes the skies are bright blue, sometimes they're dark. And in her realizing what pilots have to go through, she starts to realize, oh, well then I can navigate the blues in my life, which is where the title comes from, all the blues in the sky. That I can learn how to fly literally, and I can learn how to fly metaphorically. I thought that I had a page here. Let's see. Pilots see many shades of blue in the sky. Light blue, medium blue, vibrant, bright blue, white blue. A blue deep and mysterious mixed with gray. A blue that melts and sheds and morphs into purples and pinks. Everyone loves those beautiful blue skies, but sometimes the sky is dark blue, black blue, midnight blue, and sometimes life is blue too. Blue is the empty chair at the desk in the classroom where my best friend used to sit. Blue is the ache in my heart when I pick up the phone to call her and remember she is gone. Blue is Aunt Emmy's warm hugs. Blue is a hot mug of cocoa on a cold, stormy day. Blue is all the calm, all the heartbreak, all the hope, all the tears, all the laughter. Maybe, just maybe, blue, not red, is the color of love, with all its mood and passion and emotion. For all the blues in the sky, there are as many blues in the heart.
In that section of the book, when I'm reading all the different colors and beautiful description of the sky, and how that, is related to our heart, and my mind is this beautiful moment metaphor, like the sky is wide open, and so can your heart be wide open. It's still right, even when you've experienced that loss. For you, what does the color blue represent?
It's so interesting. I've been thinking, of course, about blue a lot because of this book. And I think I associated blue with sadness before I wrote this book. But then I remembered how much I love the ocean and I love to be at the beach. And blue actually represents a lot of my good memories are tied to the color blue. Being at the beach, thinking of my birthdays in July. I grew up in rainy, gray Portland, Oregon. So the summertime, as a July birthday, I got to really have a sunny birthday. I never had to worry really about if it was gonna rain on my birthday or not. So I have a lot of association of beautiful, bright blue skies and the ocean. And so, yeah, I think in writing the book, I, especially like in that last passage, was thinking of other ways that blue shows up that isn't heavy, sad, darkness blue, but is the more bright, vibrant, electric blue. And I've certainly had a lot of that in my life. So I've been doing a writing activity with young people, asking them to kind of like unpack a color, personify a color. What does this color mean? How does purple show up in your life? What's yellow? And if you were going to give it the 5 senses, yellow tastes like, yellow smells like, yellow feels like. And so they've been writing some really profound, beautiful poems thinking about colors and how we feel colors and live colors in our life. Yeah, it's been fun.
I'm going to ask one last question, and I do want to open up for some audience questions, yes? So my last question is actually one we posed to the audience at the beginning with those wonderful cards that Katrina set out for everyone. What would you tell your middle years self?
I would tell myself to give myself grace. I was talking to young people today, letting them know I was very hard on myself as a kid. Just high expectations. My family, my community, they expected us to do right and be right. And I think that's important to have high standards and to push our young people. But I think when I didn't always make that mark, it would hurt so bad. I would feel so, I would be really hard on myself inwardly. Like you would never know the things I was saying to myself. So I would tell little Renee to give yourself grace and that you can grow. You can always change, I don't know that I knew that either, that my now wasn't gonna always be, but that I had the capability to learn and be better in many ways, in school and in just life skills. So yeah, that's what I would say to her.
And keep talking to her, right? We can always go back and talk to, I don't know, some of you might be like me, my inner child is always popping up and I'm having to give them a talk or two now. But we can always say, we hear that, Mandy, too. It'll be all right. All right, let's open it up for some questions. Just raise your hand. I think we should be able to hear you if you speak up. I know some of you got questions. Please raise your hand.
I would comment that all of the things that I learned about Portland's history. And this book was just, it started conversations and it started a dialogue with a lot of people that I wouldn't have had if I hadn't read this book. So
Thank you. She's holding up skin and bones. Thank you so much for that.
Yes.
I know that you just kind of said that people kind of ask you like why different reasons for writing certain ways maybe. When you first started writing, what was your why, and is that still the same now?
Yes, my why hasn't changed. I believe words have power. I believe our stories matter. I want Black girls especially to be the center of our stories. I want dark-skinned Black girls on book covers with our natural hair. So all of those reasons. You know, I grew up in Portland, and I grew up reading the Beverly Cleary series. I love Ramona. The Ramona series written by Beverly Cleary. You can tell me nothing. When I realized that Tat Street was a real street in Portland, I was like, oh my God, she's writing about my home. Because you know, if you don't live in New York or LA, you kind of sometimes don't get in books. So to see the Pacific Northwest on the page was so cool. And this girl who was feisty and made mistakes, I loved Ramona. But there were no Black people in that series, even though my aunt lived around the corner from Clickertat Street and in Ramona's neighborhood. So that's such a big reason of why I write. I didn't know how to articulate that as a kid, but I felt something was missing. And I want to just make sure that we're putting nuanced stories about Blackness out into the world. I want to be a part of that.
I want to thank you. The 7-year-old boy in me thanks you. I write from a 7-year-old level, and my passion is to get Black people outdoors. Because I never imagined that I would actually see myself. When I grew up, it was all about the wild things.
Yeah.
And so now it can be about the wild boys and the wild activities and stuff like that. So just creating that space. So the 7-year-old boy today, finally, he feels like he's been held. And somebody's holding him. And so I want to thank you for that. Because representation matters.
I had the pleasure of going to 2 school visits with you earlier today, so I'm going to cheat a little bit. So you mentioned on one of our visits some of the difficulties you had not difficulties, but some of the loss that you've had to deal with in relatively recent, I'll say from the pandemic kind of forward. And something that struck me as I was going through the book is this wrestle that Sage had internally with some of the folks in her group, and for lack of a better phrase, kind of the loss Olympics, right? She felt her loss was greater than other characters in her group, and I'm curious if you were to rewind 6, 7, 8 years ago, if you would have been able to write that portion, that interaction with the group and Sage's thoughts, if not for having the loss that you've experienced in the last, call it 4 to 5 years.
Oh, absolutely not. That whole plot line came from wrestling with when you get to say goodbye and you see death coming and you kind of know it's happening, and when you just get the phone call. I've had both several times over. I have been at bedside. I have been prepared as much as you can be prepared for something like that. And I know that hurts deep, and once the person is gone, they are gone. And then I've gotten a phone call of young people, friends, not, just turning 50, gone. And so, I think, we sometimes out of a good place of wanting to just show empathy and bear witness, we'll start to share our stories of loss. When someone says, what happened to them? Oh yeah. And then it gets into that, oh, you got to say goodbye. Or, oh, they lived to be 80. That's great. We start to categorize and start to compare losses as if to say that it still doesn't hurt. And so I just wanted first of all, I need a character who's working on something. She can't show up perfect on the page. And so she's jealous, and she has some issues to work through. She's not a good listener all the time, listening to other people's stories. She's constantly listening to them say her own, like, well, but I didn't get to say, all right, this is how it was for me. And so I wanted her to grow in that area of just, I don't have to understand what you've been through to care about what you've been through. And I think sometimes we are listening and in relationships to understand people. And I think it's okay, but I have no idea how it feels to walk through something like that. But I care about you. And I don't need to then compare what I've been, you know what I mean? So yeah, I just wanted her to grow, be on her growing edge in that. And I definitely was pulling out my own questions, feelings, what people have said to me, depending on where I was on that spectrum of did I know it was happening, how close was I to a person, like what? I'm grieving. Why? It's amazing what people will say to try to gauge how sad you should be.
Yeah.
As if to say, you know, sometimes I've lost people who I was so close to, but they were so ready to go. And they had lived such a great life that there was much more peace in that than someone who there was an estrangement. And when they died, I just was like, oh, that's how it ends for us. Like we actually are never going to work that out. But I still love them, right? So the grief was different, but it was still grief. And so yeah, I wanted Sage to have to learn a little bit about that.
Yeah, I was just gonna say, I just moved to Austin recently from Blacksburg, Virginia, where I was a school librarian for many, many years. So Nikki has been a part of my world, and I got to hear her speak many times, including after the tragedy of Virginia Tech. I was able to hear that. It was so powerful. But how did she come to be a part of your life? I'm just curious.
Oh my goodness, this story. I got a text message from Kwame Alexander, who's a writer, a good friend, and he says, yo, is it okay if I give Nikki your phone number and your address? He's like, Nikki who? Full name. So it truly took me a moment, because I know several Nikkis in my life, and they all had my information, so I just really stared at it for a moment, and I was like, you know, because she taught him in college, so she was a mentor to him. So she had read Piecing Me Together, and she said to him, do you know the woman who wrote this book? I need to write her. And she wrote me a letter telling me how much she loved Piecing Me Together. And then I wrote her back, and then she wrote me. And then we just kind of became pen pals for a while. And then we met in real life. And after we met in person, after several exchanges back and forth, she just took me, and there was no choice. She was just like, you're my daughter, and I love you. And we just did life together. And she walked me through the grief of losing my mother. So that my mother was still living when I met Nikki. So I just had the best, I had bonus love. And when my mother died, Nikki reached out to me either by phone call or text every day for 30 days. For the first 30 days of living without my mother on this earth, that woman made sure I knew that I was loved, that I was going to be okay. And so after that, we just became extremely close. And I always said, you know, we didn't talk about writing and poetry. I never looked at her as a mentor in that way. She truly was a friend. Nikki would be frying chicken in her kitchen and talking about life and just loving me. And yeah, I just felt so seen by that woman. All of me, not just the writer part of me, but she was a dear friend and a second mom for sure.
See, the one in that, and then,
Hello, thank you for coming. This is amazing. I wanted to speak to the point you made earlier about validating feelings of the kids. Can you speak to what went into that point being something that you continually revisited over the course of this book, and even in your talks now, just emphasize the importance of validating children's feelings?
I don't know that we can heal from things we don't name. And so I just think it's important to name sadness, to call disappointment, and to let questions be questions that might not be answerable. Sage is learning, she thinks that, math, there's this plus this equals this, and then there's to science the things, and she really loves that subject because she's looking for some concrete things. And then she realizes, oh, wait a minute, even in science, there's still questions and there's still things we don't know and we can't explain. I think it's okay to sit in that place. So we just have to remind ourselves of that over and over, because our society does not make space for that. And you can feel like something's wrong with you if you're still sad about something, or if you're still feeling something, because the world moves on quickly.
Yes.
You know how it is. I was even about, I know we're talking about Nikki a lot, but I remember that feeling of when someone first dies, especially someone of her stature, all over the news, all over, you're seeing her everywhere, and then there's a new news story that's coming, right? And so I think it's important to, while the world is moving on, to still acknowledge that I'm still feeling some things, and that I need to still process and reflect, and that's healthy and normal. So I want young people to have space for that. And one last thing I'll say about that, I say often that I think when you're in a room like this and something weird happens and you find the person who saw it too.
Have a whole conversation.
You might not even know them, but you just had a moment with them. I think that books and art is that look that says, I see it too. You're not making this up. Yes. I really want my books to do that. I think visual art does that. I think when we allow ourselves to bear witness to what is happening, it gives us a moment to pause. And just, that moment is fleeting, but the feeling is still there. And you can say, yeah, I saw it too, and then talk about it.
I think one more question. Yep, right here.
This has been so phenomenal. So you said poetry is your first love?
Yes.
Mine too. So my question is simple. What is your favorite poem?
Your favorite poem.
Come on now.
I had to.
So the funny thing is, today at a school, I think a 7th grader asked me that same question. I gave them that look like, are you for real? So what I said was, there are too many who pick a favorite. It's like, there's no way. But in my mind, in that moment, and I think lately, I've been thinking a lot of My People by Langston Hughes. It is a short poem, is it 4 lines maybe? Yes. And I don't know it by heart, but it is this, the night is beautiful, so the souls of my people. Like something along those lines of just looking into nature and things that are black. Yes. And saying, my people are as beautiful as that. And right now, those words feel so important with what we're going through in this world, and the erasure and the pushback of our stories. And I'm holding on to the truth of our people being beautiful, and that we matter.
Yes.
So right now, that's my favorite poem. Today, just today. Back to tomorrow, and I'll say something from Lucille Clifton, all right?
Oh my God. Everyone, a round of applause. Then move to the front. Eric, do you want to announce what's
Yes, you got it, exactly. So, again, thank you everyone for coming out. This was, I can speak for me, this has been a phenomenal day. This is, I didn't think about it, this is my 3rd author event today. I've been to 2 schools and now here, but this has been a blessing. Thank you so much everyone for coming out. Everyone registered. Everyone has a free signed copy waiting for you, courtesy of Torch Literary House. So we're going to ask everyone to head back over to the store. Katrina and Alicia will be handing those books out to you. Micah is going to get you guys, kind of get you guys settled, get you back over there, and then you'll be personalizing a few copies for folks that want to get their book personalized, all right? But if you could, just head back over to the store. And we'll be getting that piece up and running here within the next 10, 15 minutes or so, okay?